Hi, all homeowners, justices of the Supreme Court of Georgia, and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Please understand that sometimes it's important to actually have a human presentation where you can see the humanness of the case. My name is Christopher Hunt. I have a PhD in theology, a master's in counseling. I was never late on a payment. My mortgage company, per their own employees, the closing attorney, and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, ruled that the mortgage company committed first breach. I had a fixed mortgage, and my mortgage company started to escalate the payments illegally in breach. Because I'm a self-employed entrepreneur, I had to keep my credit, so I kept paying the escalated amounts while writing in letters of protest and all the closing documents. And then finally, the employees and the closing attorney, each month they were escalating the payments. Crazy. And that fulfilled the Supreme Court of the JESINOSKI, where I actually in writing protested within the first 3 months. So I have JESINOSKI on my side. Then that mortgage company sent back all my payment when I sent in the proper amount saying I can't keep paying this escalating amount. You're in breach of contract, so here's the contract amount. They sent it back to me and went silent. Then they went bankrupt. And then the mortgage companies violated the Sarnsby and the Oxley congressional laws to prohibit this type of activity by selling my breached contract in big bundles per the movie The Big Short. If you want to understand this case, you have to watch the movie The Big Short. So another mortgage company would get in touch with me and say, hey, we're going to foreclose because you haven't been making your payments. I go, no, actually, you bought a breached contract. Here's the proper amount. Here's all the evidence. And I would send in the proper payment. They returned it and went silent. I had no way to communicate with anybody. This happened 4 times. And then Nation Star, it's been so bad, they had to change the name to Mr. Cooper, and even one of their hometown newspapers wrote an article saying you have to change more than your name, you have to change your behavior because they're still corrupt as hell. Then what happened was I said, hey, look, you guys, here's the evidence here. They sent it back and said, you're going to have to send us a $3,000 payment. And I'm like, why do I have to send you $3,000? But I will anyways. And then you guys fix the breach and then credit me the $1,200 because my mortgage is only supposed to be $1,800, but I sent them $3,000. Well, they breached that, and that's how I became a class action winning member of Robinson in the Middle Court District of Maryland, Greenbelt Division. So you might be saying, Christopher, if you were never late on a payment, if they did first breach that's been affirmed by the 11th Circuit of Appeals, and you're a winning member of the Robinson, how can you possibly be at risk of losing your house? Because a fraud in the courts by Balch, who has senior partners in prison. The 2 lead attorneys for both Balch and Aldrich Pite have been fired from the firms they were representing it, and they committed fraud in the courts. They lied and they violated their own jurisdiction in the federal courts to come into one of the most corrupt counties in the United States, DeKalb County, and defrauded judges who appear to be on an egotistical bend and are prejudiced against pro se litigants. I was forced to be pro se because when this first started, I paid $750 for an attorney who specializes in representing homeowners, and he said, okay, this is going to be a challenging case. They've removed it already to the federal courts after I was granted a state TPO, right, proven correct. And so it's going to take like what was the equivalent of like a $30,000-$40,000 retainer and cost over $100,000. Well, I was coming out of the Great Recession as a builder and a minister, and I didn't have that kind of money, but I had to save my house. So I went ahead and fought this thing pro se all this time, and to make a 10-year legal battle where I've been proven correct in everything and by other courts with good judges, but the other parties had attorneys, so they weren't prejudiced against. The courts are so biased against pro se that a federal judge who had a cake life, easy life with everything for him, had resigned, Judge Posner, Posner, because pro se litigants are treated like trash. Now I've got a case in the Supreme Court of Georgia www.supremecourtofgeorgia.us, and I'm appealing to their honor and the integrity, the spirit, and the intent of the U.S. Constitution. Right there, during an illegal, contemptuous, fraud on the court, attempted eviction, I was explaining to an officer who had no clue of what was going on, and within 10-minute explanation, because the other attorneys weren't there to lie, misrepresent, and fraud the courts and prejudice the bias the courts, where I have terrible orders that are nothing but are slandering me, and they're based on lies. I write factual law. My dad went to Harvard Law and then dropped out 50 years before it became cool to be a very successful entrepreneur, and he taught me things and enough about law to where I can defend myself. And so that is sweet. That is really good. Thank you. And you see, these are our neighbors. Thank you. And so what happened was he taught me enough about law to be able to give these guys the fight of their life. And the police officer who was standing right there said, oh, so the first mortgage breached their contract, and instead of fixing it, they illegally sold it to another mortgage company who thinks it's easier to evict you than to sue the other company and to try to, so they're trying to steal the house. Exactly correct. The police officer in 10 minutes understood the whole case. And now what I've uncovered is the largest mortgage scam in the history of the United States. And what they did was the mortgage companies took the taxpayers' money and went and bought as many defaulted bad loans as they could for 10 cents on the dollar. And then they foreclosed on people, stealing the homes instead of working with the homeowners, because they gave them the bailout money and trying to help them save it. And that's how I became a class action winning member of Robinson in middle court, because they were violating RESPA violations. Why would they violate RESPA violations? Because they were making 90 cents on the dollar. When they paid 10 cents on the dollar, they were making 90% ROI by just taking in the mortgages and then selling the homes. Plus, like in my case, I have $500,000 worth of equity. I have $500,000 worth of equity in my home because I built this home with my own hands. My kids used to play kickball right there. I raised my kids. I planted 150 bulbs here, believing God was going to work a miracle and touch the judges, because I have angels looking out after my house. I have Bible study teachings and everything. GodIsLove.church. GodIsLove.church. I'm a minister, and I'm also a businessman. I developed this subdivision, named it after my daughter. And so how can I be losing my house? Only through courts being defrauded, if not corrupted, because Balch has senior partners in jail for corrupting government officials. So there's something definitely wrong going with this case, and that's why I've broadcast it onto the website so people can see. The judges may hate pro se. They may have their legal oligarchy and they don't care about pro se, but they better care for the spirit and the intent of the U.S. Constitution, and they better care for the honor of the courts, because everybody's going to see it. So per canons, they might have to look at other attorneys and say, look, you guys have gone way out of bounds. You've disrespected the courts. You've committed fraud on the courts. You've violated jurisdiction. You've gotten false laws in Georgia, false orders in Georgia when you were supposed to be in the federal courts, because you, without authorization, changed parties from Nation Star to Deutsche, came into this and misrepresented the status of the case in an illegal ex parte hearing with a magistrate judge in DeKalb, who wrote an order that was the exact same date as the federal order, and the judge referred to it saying, I have all jurisdiction, and so it's time for an eviction, after they did a contemptuous illegal foreclosure while jurisdiction was in the federal courts. And the presiding judge wouldn't grant me a second TPO, saying you can sue them for wrongful foreclosure. So when I sued them for wrongful foreclosure, and removed it to the federal courts, they came in and lied to the magistrate judge, and so I was granted the second TPO. I was granted 2 TPOs in the state, and then they got that TPO removed, saying, oh, that case had been removed because of a clerical error, it was filed in the wrong case that had been removed. So instead of fixing the clerical error, the judge who gave the second TPO as an objective court of equity, because she saw the federal court order and the state were conflicting because the state magistrate judge of DeKalb was defrauded. Now, the whole thing comes down to is the Supreme Court of Georgia going to rule per the constitutional law? The Supreme Court of Georgia, the District Court of Maryland, and the USCA 11, and the Middle Court of Georgia. The Middle District Court of Georgia has ruled MALONE that says when a mortgage company breaches a contract, it can't even go to court. It can't sue about any part of the contract till it cures the breach. And I, as a minister, just asked them to cure the breach. And they didn't want to do it. They got greedy. They got greedy and tried to steal my house for 10 cents on the dollar with a $500,000 in mortgage. So now think about this. Not only are they making 90 cents on the dollar, but then they're stealing all the appreciated value. These greedy bastards, and they're bad acting debt collectors who are bastards to the bar, mental prostitutes, have got to be held accountable. They're not going to steal my house, okay? Judges put people in jail for stealing TVs, and now these judges know now without a doubt that if they don't rule per the spirit and the intent of law, they are going to be guilty of enabling the theft of an entire home of a senior citizen who has $500,000 equity for his retirement and his children's college education. Thank you for the time you've listened to this. If you're an attorney, I can pay you. I can pay you now, and I've been begging attorneys for help to come in, and you've got a huge award available for a class action lawsuit. God bless. I need an Erwin Barkovich type of attorney. Help all of us homeowners. Supreme Court of Georgia U.S. justices. Do you hear my voice? I'm asking you to do your job. And you've got a very easy out now. Just to order the case back into the state to let them clear up the clerical error that they should not have voided the TPO and then done an illegal supersedious that was never asked for as a trick way to try to evict because they're asking for $300,000 when they are in breach of contract. And my mortgage is only $5,000 and there's no damages equal to that. So it's all, and I know that if you order it down to fix the clerical error per Rule 60 that you should do, that now we can have the congruence and the respect of the court's jurisdiction where the Supreme Court JESINOSKI, the Middle Court of Georgia MALONE, the District Court of Maryland Greenbelt Division Robbins, and the USCA 11 ruled the breach of contract. Now this judge will rule properly and the parties will settle. Thank you very much.